My name is Brooke Horn. I'm Operations Manager at BISG, and it's my pleasure to open today's webinar, AI in Marketing, Maximizing Your Digital Reach on Amazon and Beyond. I am joined today by Brooke Dobson, co-founder and chief revenue officer of Shimmer AI. Thank you for joining us, Brooke. And Joshua Talent, director of sales and education at Firebrand Technologies and chair of BISG's board. These folks will be in conversation today talking about AI and marketing, and it's going to be a great discussion. We're very much looking forward to it. Just a couple of house things real quick. This webinar will be recorded, so if you have to drop early, it will be distributed to everyone who signed up. And we do encourage you, we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the session, so go ahead and drop those questions in the Q&A feature in the webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Joshua.
Thank you very much, Brooke. And I think we have a little poll to begin with. So we'll run this little poll and give people an opportunity to answer just a question here. Um, First question here is, what AI tools are you using in your marketing? And some options that come up. And if there's anything that's not on the list, I'm sure you could put it in the chat or something, and we can see if there's other things you're using. But definitely very interesting to see what people are currently doing for AI right now. TextGen, of course, looking really good. Image generation, automation, metadata. All right. Those are some very interesting results. I think, okay. It's like we're good. Does that seem like it's everybody? I think so. All right. Very good. Thank you for that, Brooke, for running that for us. So we'll keep that information. I guess I can probably make it not share anymore or whatever. But thank you for that. And Brooke, it's going to get confusing if I just say Brooke and Brooke. So I'm going to say when I call Brooke, I'm calling Brooke Dobson. I'm talking to Brooke Dobson. Um, Thanks so much for taking some time to chat through this. This is a really interesting topic, of course, and everybody's really curious about how do I do better with my marketing? How do I handle AI specifically with marketing? And it's one of those areas when you hear people talking about AI, marketing is the thing. Everybody's like, yeah, obviously you should be using it in your marketing because it's so important. But when we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, you were saying that we're at a critical moment in marketing's relationship with AI. So if you think about it that way, what's the problem that you see? What do you think AI is going to actually do to solve that problem?
Yeah, so just to give you guys in the audience a bit of a background on myself, I started my career in advertising, like traditional advertising, traditional marketing analytics, and then I got kind of the second half of my career, I got into technology and AI. A lot of the founding team at my current business, Shimmer, did a previous AI business together in the space of brand management. So I've worked my entire career and my education in a combination of marketing and also analytics and AI. So what I've seen, over the years, I feel like you've seen marketing become a lot more difficult. And I think that's because of several different things. One, media fragmentation. I mean, there are so many different places to get media now, and you're being hit with ads from so many different directions. There are so many different social media platforms that you can be hit with advertising, but also choose as a brand to advertise on. So it's very difficult to find your audience compared to what it used to be. And that in combination with the fact that attention spans are also lower than they used to be. I mean, there's stats, you can find various stats on this, but what I've seen is that attention spans are 8 seconds or less. And what that means is it's just a bigger challenge for when you are delivering content and you're putting your content in front of people. It needs to be immediately impactful. It needs to be able to hit a person's system one kind of subconscious reaction, or they're really not going to pay much attention to it. And so those are kind of some of the challenges that I've seen in marketing over the years, just kind of get, greater and greater. You also have a lot of waste. I mean, this is a historic problem with marketing and advertising, is that it's very difficult to know what part of your marketing is working and what's not working, and that high level of uncertainty generates generally a lot of waste in your marketing. And the challenge with books specifically, and I've been working in the book industry now for the past several years since we launched Shimmer in late 2022. So I have a comparison between books and lots of other industries that I worked in prior. And the challenge I see in books is that the profit margins are generally very low. So most products can't sustain the type of waste that marketing and advertising brings, but books definitely can. So what that means is that there's a huge opportunity to create a lot better content, target audiences more in a much more nuanced, finite, specific way, accurate way, and also know quickly what's working and what's not working, so that you're not wasting those advertising dollars or those marketing dollars before you know whether what you're doing is even working. And so AI provides solutions to pretty much every one of those problems. AI, for example, AI, you because you can generate so much content and target audiences very quickly based on really the content of a book and just really knowing every detail about that book psychographically and structurally, in order to produce strong target audiences, strong creatives. And then the fact that AI is very smart and efficient at testing and figuring out what's actually working, there's a great opportunity to not only have to prioritize quality or quantity, you can now do both. You can now figure out, you can produce lots of assets, test them very quickly, know what's actually working in the real world amongst real readers that you're targeting much more, accurately. And then you stop spending dollars that are not working.
Yeah, that's really good. To that point of the attention span getting smaller, there was a study MIT did a couple of years ago, it's probably about 5 years ago, where they looked at how quickly do we judge an image. And it was less than a second. It was like half of a second that a human brain will decide that's what, yes, I like that or I don't like that. I want to see more or I don't want to see more. You really like that's a big issue when you're thinking about book marketing. How quickly do people make a judge a book cover? How quickly do they make a decision about the graphic that you put on your social media, whatever it is? It is really interesting to me when thinking about these issues that the like AI tools, the goal with an AI tool and using it in marketing is kind of what you were saying, to iterate and to dig into the detail, the data, and be able to see, is it working? Is it not? If it's not, let me iterate with something else. It gives you an opportunity to do that iterative process that normally in the past would just take a lot of crunching of details or just guesswork. So that's where AI can be pretty helpful to help you really drill down into the detail there.
And on the 1 second point, so like your subconscious, or sometimes you refer to them as system one and system two, is what, that your subconscious versus kind of your rational, aware state.
Mhm.
And your subconscious is within that 1 or 2 seconds where you're actually reacting to something. And when you can deliver emotional content to people, that helps a lot in kind of triggering that immediate subconscious system one response. So this is another thing where AI can really help. So typically product marketing or performance marketing, which generally uses a product when you're talking about further down the funnel, like awareness marketing, which is higher up the funnel, oftentimes you're getting very brand focused, a lot more kind of macro level. But when you're getting further down the funnel to where you actually want people to drive in and purchase a product, in product marketing, you're usually showing a picture of the product. What AI has enabled to do is actually use AI to be able to uncover the stories within a book and actually visualize those stories in a much more emotional way that can kind of tap into that subconscious. So you're actually doing narrative advertising a lot further down the funnel, closer to the purchase than was possible before.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a really interesting way to do it. Yeah, I love that. So
Yeah.
okay, so we're getting into some practicality here because and I'm a hugely practical person when I'm thinking about metadata or thinking about publishing workflows or things like that. You want to think about things in a practical way. So let's dive into that a little bit because the biggest question I think everybody has with any new technology, whether that's AI or anything else, is just simply not knowing where to start. So you use a framework when you're doing this to try to guide teams through the process of that. Can you walk us through your framework and explain kind of what are the practical aspects of starting to work with AI in a marketing context in book publishing?
Yeah, I found it. I can't take credit for actually creating this framework, but I've taken a framework that I've used in many years in the past, from an operational point of view in businesses, in order to help the people that I'm working with, because we do quite a few workshops around the world, and I have always found like the one of the biggest hesitations to just be that there is AI kind of hit a couple of years ago, and then all of a sudden there's such a proliferation of tools in different areas that you can use it, and it can be very overwhelming. And that's one of the main reasons that leads people to not being able to, like, to having a resistance to change. It's like one of the cruxes of change management. You are making sure that people have ways to do it, to bring something into their jobs in an easier way. So there's a framework that I've used as part of the EOS system, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is called the Delegate Elevate framework. And I found it very useful. Like the typical traditional use of it is to figure out where you can delegate parts of your roles to other people on your teams and then it helps you elevate yourself and the roles and the skills that you want to focus on, elevating for yourself by delegating other things. So I think you can use it really well with where to delegate to AI versus where to have AI help support you in the things that you want to continue doing in your role. So essentially what you do is you look at the things that you love and are great at, the things that you like and you're good at, those are your top two quadrants. And then the things that you don't like and you're good at, and the things that you don't like and you're bad at. And essentially, those things that are in the bottom that you either don't like or you're not good at are the things that you can start looking to where can I automate some of this stuff using AI. And then in the elevate boxes are areas where a lot of these things are skills that you still want to develop. And so you can use AI there. You might not want to automate those things within your role, but you might want to use AI as a thought leader alongside you. So it just kind of gives you an easy starting point, and then I think it's a less overwhelming starting point with AI.
Yeah, and a lot of this too with AI is letting it help you think through things, because you may not even be able to think through what are the things. I know what I do on a daily basis. I know the tasks I need to get done, but how do I make that distinction in my own brain? So sometimes an AI tool can be very helpful for helping you dig into that difference and then figure out what are the elements of this one thing that I'm doing that are actually could be benefited in some different way. I've used AI myself for, having it help me think through a process in a way that I would never think through it, right? To give me insights into that workflow or that process or that marketing campaign, and just to throw things against the wall and see what sticks. But that's one of those things where if you didn't have the tool available, you'd be sticking in the kind of the rut of whatever you happen to know already.
Yeah, and in that way, Joshua, AI can improve the skills that you have in your own job.
Yeah.
I think that there is a lot of focus on how AI can be used for efficiency and okay, like where can I automate? Where can I take things off my plate? But it actually, I found it a lot in my roles, in a startup like Shimmer, like the business I'm working in. You have to wear lots of different hats, and you may
Hmm.
have not worn that particular hat before. And I have found myself being able to do a lot more within my business because I have AI as a thought partner. So for example, I've gotten involved in the financial side of our business quite a lot, but I was able to do modeling that I needed to know how to do it. I needed to be able to instruct my partner, and how to help me think through it. But I would have never been able to do that on my own without
Yeah.
AI. So it does elevate your skills in a lot of ways if you allow it to.
Yeah. I like this idea too of being able to delegate the things that you like, but you're not good at. Um, if I'm not good at something, but I like doing it, maybe I need to be thinking a little bit more about that. But even more so, the things I'm not good at and I really don't like to do, how can I automate the heck out of that? Get that off of my plate. I don't have to think about it very much. I'm going to let something else do that hard work or do that thing that I just really don't like to do. That is a really helpful way to think about where can AI be useful. And in a way, it's almost the kind of grunt work that we would in the past have pushed off on a poor intern who's sitting there in the bullpen over next to us. But taking advantage of that tool that can do that work, that hard grunt work stuff, or the things that are kind of always falling down that I always put off because I don't have the time to do it. It's just not as important to me, but it's still important. It's just I don't have the time. Those are the kinds of things that make sense to delegate, especially in the marketing sense.
Yeah, exactly.
So Amazon is obviously always a big question mark in the marketing space and publishing, and it's always changing. There's constantly evolving algorithms. So how can AI help publishers and authors kind of stay ahead of the shifting landscape of marketing and advertising on Amazon?
Yeah, I'm sure that there are 100 ways that I can answer this question, or that this question could be answered. And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in Amazon, but I do have quite a lot of knowledge about how AI can help support your books to sell better on Amazon. Specifically, I've been doing a lot of research recently into the A10 algorithm, which is like the I don't it's not brand new, fresh off the shelf, but there's been a lot of talk with about the A10 algorithm versus the A9 algorithm and how it's different.
Mhm.
And I found a lot of opportunity, actually. Like, typically, I think changes within Amazon ecosystem can be pretty concerning. You've just figured this out and now you have to figure it all out again. But I personally like a lot of these changes, because essentially my understanding of how the A10 algorithm has evolved is that it now prioritizes more external traffic, engagement, long-term relevance with the book versus just raw sales, which was more of the focus of the A9 algorithm. So how AI tools can help with this are: one, you can generate content that will help engagement within Amazon. So for example, you can generate your A+ content and really improve that and keep it up to date. So as you probably know, Joshua, your expertise is in a lot of metadata space. And the more you can keep your metadata fresh, same thing with your Amazon, book description and author bio and the A+ content, that all helps to improve the engagement with Amazon. So AI helps support the creation of that content, more quickly. Um, and it also, my understanding also of the A10 algorithm is because it is supporting external traffic and really kind of rewarding external traffic versus just what comes in with your Amazon ads, means that you cannot really just focus on Amazon ads. You must
Yep.
do advertising and marketing outside of the Amazon ecosystem, because that's seen and recognized by the Amazon ecosystem as external traffic, not necessarily paid traffic. So think about your Meta campaigns, your Pinterest, your TikTok, all of the different channels where you can be creating ads to drive traffic into Amazon. That's seen as organic traffic by Amazon. So it helps to stimulate algorithms in a different way than when it's coming from Amazon ads.
Yeah, and we talk a lot at Firebrand, obviously, about metadata, and the research that we've done over the years has produced a lot of really interesting details about how Amazon's algorithms can be utilized to help you promote your books more effectively, have your books be more visible, make more sales. We've been working for the last couple of years with our Flywheel service to help publishers really engage with this aspect. And one of the things that we found that's really important to remember about how the algorithms work is you have book exposure and you have conversion rate. And both of those are very important, and both of them play into the sales rank of the book, the visibility of the book, and what Amazon's algorithm is going to do with that title. And book exposure and conversion rate are driven by different aspects of your metadata. So you have, book exposure is highly driven by, like you were saying, certain things like coming in from outside, but also things like the title of the book and the keywords, especially. Book exposure is going to be heightened when you have keywords that are good, that are highlighting that book. But it's also impacted by other stuff that people might not think about very much, things like images. If you have more than just a single cover image, that will increase the visibility of your book, because Amazon's algorithm is looking for products that have more images. A+ content. Not having A+ can negatively affect your book exposure. And then the same thing on the conversion rate side. You want a book description that makes sense, that reads well, that is visually appealing, a cover image, obviously, that looks good. And those extra images need to look good, because you want somebody, when they get to that page, they did a search, they clicked on your book, do they actually buy it? because that conversion rate is really important. And we've also found at Firebrand that the timing of those changes is really important. And this is again where machine learning and AI can be helpful in what we're doing in our Flywheel program. We can see when things are changing in a way that you can't see with the naked eye, that a human would never catch. And when you see the changes happening, Amazon's system is built around this watching what's happening with the title. And if a title starts to kick, you want to kick it more. You want to be able to see more change. And that's where metadata changes at the right time make a huge difference over just metadata changes done randomly or done on some general schedule. So you want to think about all those aspects, and AI tools can be useful, or machine learning can be useful for helping you really focus in on what the right change to make is and what the right time to make that change is.
Yeah, the timing point is really interesting. It made me think of a related point, not exactly about Amazon, but it works similar with when you're putting media budget into advertising campaigns. If your campaign is doing really well and then you reward it with more media budget, the algorithms say, oh, I must have done something right, so I'm going to keep doing that thing,
Yep.
But it's risky on the flip side to increase media budget when the campaign's not doing well. So you have to be very calculated about it. It is all about timing, because then the algorithms think you're rewarding it but actually it's not performing well. So you have to be careful about how how incrementally you increase or decrease your media budgets even. If you have a really strong performing campaign and you cut the media budget on it, it thinks it did something wrong. So it's all very interesting how the algorithms work, and how you have to be so careful about the decisions that you're making, or you could really mess up what you've done so far.
Yeah, because even AI systems are really dumb. I mean, it's still garbage in, garbage out, or it's looking at data, and it could be smarter if there actually is AI and not just machine learning behind it. There may be a little bit more to it, but yeah, you have to be careful about not giving bad signals to the systems and expecting it to do the right thing with the bad signals.
Exactly. Yep.
So your company Shimmer creates automated advertising for books, and you're using AI across kind of the entire advertising funnel to make it completely hands-free. What's the biggest resistance that you've seen in the publishing world as you've started down that process and using AI in book marketing?
Yeah. Probably everyone on this call is going to be able to relate to what I'm going to say here. It looks AI.
Mhm.
And that is, I think that feeling is dissipating a bit over time. Our CEO Nadeem at Shimmer, he writes a column for the Bookseller. In his most recent article, he kind of challenged this notion about the aesthetic of AI being so negative. And actually, if you compare this new aesthetic, which is the AI aesthetic, to new aesthetics over history, for example, Van Gogh's kind of messy art, that was considered offensive. Photography was going to ruin art, as when it came out. So I think this is just a new aesthetic that it makes sense that there's a real hesitation about it, because of the fact that the AI is very controversial, especially in this industry, where this industry has been hurt by AI a lot more than other industries. So it makes sense that there is kind of we don't want it to look like we're using AI. We don't want it to be obvious that we're using AI. But the fact is that actually readers don't seem to care. And what the proof in that is the numbers. So what we've seen is when you're able to use AI visuals that bring a narrative of a story to life, that it can lead to 6 times better click-through rates in ads. It can lead to 10 times better click-through rates in shopping and actually going to shop the book. So I really don't ever judge anything other than except for with the metrics. And so that is always my answer to that question is, yes, it looks AI. There are reasons by your contracts, you're with your authors and whatnot. Of course, there are precautions that you need to take. But from a reader's perspective, the person you're actually delivering the ad to, I don't think they care to the extent that people think that they do. And I think that will continue to dissipate.
Yeah, and as they see more and more of the same, aesthetic happening it's going to become more normalized in the minds of a consumer. It doesn't matter if it's a book or something else. They're starting to get to the point where I think everybody can still tell when certain things are AI. Obviously, there are some ways to make AI very well done, and it doesn't look like it's AI generated, but people are used to that or getting more used to that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that effect changes over time. And to the point as well, AI will get better over time as well. It'll become more and more, likely that people won't be able to tell the difference. So yeah, we have to think about this. Not, it's hard, right? If we're marketing people, if you're a visual person, a designer at heart, you've got this aesthetic and this idea. How do you get past that kind of that gut instinct to say that doesn't fit my heart, my design
Right,
heart in
right,
some way.
right.
But it's interesting, your good point about looking to the data and seeing what people are actually
Yeah.
responding to.
And there's ways to safeguard your brand too. You can have brand guidelines that you're
Yep.
making sure that you have certain restrictions. We work with some publishers that don't allow faces to be shown in fiction ads because they don't want to give away what the character is going to look like. So
Yep.
there are things that you can do to make your ads fit your brand and fit your persona, and fit your author's persona. So that's really important, is to putting in those guardrails when you feel that that is necessary. And on also just being transparent that you're using AI. I would
Yeah.
never condone hiding from the fact that you're using AI, like making something look not AI that's actually AI. I don't really say is any better. Shimmer doesn't hide behind the fact that we're AI at all. We have AI in our name. It's in our, our Facebook campaigns and whatnot. So I think just not hiding from it and not pretending like you're not doing it when you're doing it, you almost kind of have to own it.
Yeah, this is interesting too. I had a really interesting conversation with some friends the other day, talking about a project that one of my buddies was working on, and it was about music creation. And he's not a musician, but he is writing music using AI tools to develop music. And so the conversation with him and another friend who is a music producer, a longtime music producer, and having this conversation about what is legitimate. Well, how do you handle it? What do you, but transparency was one of those things that we came up that we talked about. It's like, you just have to be clear, this is AI generated. And that's, I think that again, puts it back into the mind of the consumer that, okay, they're being honest with me. There's that honesty and transparency makes a big difference in the minds of somebody who would otherwise think that what you're doing is inappropriate.
Yeah.
So AI is everywhere. It's as we learned from our poll, there are lots of places in the marketing workflow where AI can help, and a lot of places where people are using. Just to look at the poll momentarily here, 78% of the people in this call say that they're using AI for text generation. 9% say they're using it for image generation, automation, task and project automation, and metadata, which that's an interesting metadata. I wish we could drill into that a little bit more and see what people mean when they say metadata. It's like keyword creation or book description writing or whatever else. And then audience insights, of course, and marketing automation. These are all interesting things, and we're using it in general. It's really actually very helpful to see 78% of the people that responded say that they are using it at least for text generation. So marketing workflows and AI is helping marketing in a lot of ways now, but where should we use it? But should we use it for all of these different areas, right? We've got a lot of different options here and things we can do. But is AI really the right thing to do for everything in marketing?
I would say certainly you can use it for all of those things, and you do not have to use it for all of those things. I would start with the areas, again, like kind of going back to that framework. I would start with the
Yep.
things that are the lowest hanging fruit to you in your role or in your business, or where you have a gap. You don't have someone on your team to do these things, so you haven't been able to do it before. So you certainly don't have to do it in all these areas. I think about all of the different kind of steps in the marketing process, which are all of those things that you just listed out, is all being little opportunities for incremental improvement that have a huge impact when you do multiple things within it. So making small adjustments, or being able to do text generation, more quickly or more timely, for input into your metadata in a more timely fashion. Any of these individual things that you can do can have a big impact. I would test and learn, basically. So I wouldn't do any of these things and continue doing any of these things that are not actually measuring as an improvement for your bottom line of your business. So if, for example, creating a book description with AI you're able to do it a lot a lot faster, but actually it's having a harmful effect on the revenue for the title, well, you would stop doing that. So measuring it is critically important. I think you're not actually doing it if you're not measuring it, because then you have no idea what's happening. So I would say kind of start with the lowest hanging fruit, do as many of them as you can as you kind of build up to that, but only the ones that are measuring as a positive ROI on your bottom line.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times the problem with AI generally, and this isn't necessarily the case with every AI tool, but the problem with book publishing is if you throw a book description and a little bit of information about a book into ChatGPT or something and say a Claude and say, just give me back some keywords. Well, that's not necessarily going to be a good source of keywords, right? Those might be good ideas for keywords, but having a human who knows the content, knows the goals of the company, knows the approach that you want to take with the marketing of that book, that's going to be much more effective than just blatantly just kind of copy and paste out of the AI tool directly into your Onyx. So you have to think about it in a yes, you can use and maybe even should use. That's another interesting word to use in this context. Should use AI, but regardless of whether you are using or not using, you still have to think as a human, because there's still so much value in having the human aspect of this, and the knowledge and the experience that you bring to the table about your books and about your publishing company and about your goals and about your marketing plan and all of these other things. And sure, you could feed a bunch of stuff into a computer, into an AI algorithm, but that's not necessarily going to replace you, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully never, and we don't think it will. But the goal really should be to be using them as tools to help you to accomplish the things that you have to do.
You know what's really interesting is you mentioned like the fear of kind of being replaced by AI, which I completely understand that fear, of course. But I think on the other side of that, there's also a situation that can happen where you get lazy and you rely on AI too much.
Yep.
You start to just trust everything that comes out, because when AI says something that doesn't make any sense, it says it extremely confidently, and you're like, yeah, like that makes sense. That sounds good. And then you ask it to give you a citation and show you where it came from. You're like, that is complete BS, you know? So you have to, I think it's risky to use AI in areas that you personally are not at all familiar with. That you
Yep.
still have to be able to guide it like it's a teammate of yours. You know, you wouldn't be responsible for the revenue of the business if you've never worked in sales or marketing before, or the financials of the business if you've never worked in finance. You shouldn't
Yep.
be using AI in those situations if you don't have the skills to oversee the AI in those things. You know, because you will make mistakes. You won't know when it's hallucinating, when it's done a miscalculation, because you won't have the eye to check it. And so that's really important, that you are always checking it and then re-guiding it, you know, get it back on track when needed to do so.
Yeah. So there's a lot of leaders on this call, leaders of marketing teams, people who are trying to oversee what's happening in marketing at their companies. So what are the things that they can do practically when they're setting the tone on use of AI to help their teams succeed with AI tools, and to make sure that what they're doing is not going in a direction that's going to long term be detrimental to the company?
I think that this really starts with the values and the culture of the business itself.
Yep.
You know, there's going to be nothing but fear amongst your team that AI is going to steal their jobs if the culture and the values are not, let's all embrace it and be rewarded for embracing it yourself. So, for example, there are some things that I'm doing in our business and that Shimmer is doing in our business to have an AI open mentality and ensure that that's part of our values and part of our culture. So, if, for example, you want to ensure that everyone in your team is leveraging AI to automate 10% of their job in the next 12 months or 20% of their job in the next 12 months, you should think about what those goals are and then reward your team for doing that. Make it
Yeah.
fun. Share how everyone's doing it. Because as you learn how to use these tools, it becomes a relief almost that you have started being able to leverage something that is helping to support you in your job, you know, and do some things that you either didn't want to do or that are making you better. So setting those types of goals so it feels like a reward to bring AI into your job rather than a risk that you're now going to just eliminate me because of it. And those rewards can be salary. If you're a smaller business, it could be equity, it could be a change in your role. You know, there's a lot of different things that you know you can do to push this extremely far, and I'm sure I'm gonna upset some people by saying this, but you could push your mindset extremely far and go as far as to say, if you automate your full job, if you eliminate your job, I will pay you a year's salary. Like there's things that you could do that were, I wouldn't suggest that you go that far in your business, but I think starting at the values and starting at the culture and condoning it are really important.
Yeah, and I think the other side of this too is as a leader picking the right AI tools and having a plan in place for implementation where you're not just randomly just throwing people out, start using AI, but help direct and guide those decisions, do some testing and let your team, let your team do some testing, but then have them report back and have other people give input. If you're on the marketing team, have the editorial team come in and have a conversation about what you're doing and say, okay, so what do you see in here that maybe we don't see, and have that transparency and that visibility internally so that you can have a better conversations about what tools are really helping you and which tools are not, and which tools maybe you haven't seen before. There's so many AI tools out there. Some of them are really great and some of them maybe not so much. And so the question is always going to be, how do we iterate on the choices we're making? And as a leader, you have to set the tone for that. And I love this point of saying, what is our tone of AI? What's our use of AI as a company? What openness do we have? What are we actually doing? Kind of the values we have around AI use. I think that's really important to have those conversations very transparently within your team and within the company, and set those as standards.
And there are resources that you can give your team to help them to get started as well. Thad McRoy, who I'm sure most people know on this call, has a database that he shares openly of like he's probably gotten to 100 or even more, companies at this point that he himself has learned about, and put into a database. Keith Reigert has done something similar. So there are resources out there that are open resources from people who are from this industry and have used tools and are helping other companies, with those tools. So that's another nice way for managers to be able to help their teams by giving them some of those resources.
Yeah, definitely. So sustainability always comes up as part of the conversation about AI, and in publishing, we obviously are very concerned about sustainability in a lot of different areas. So there's this growing concern with AI and the energy that it's consuming. What can publishers do to embrace these tools that are out there without compromising the sustainability goals they have as an organization?
Yeah, it's a great question and a really big one as well. There are some things that I think that we like in the publishing industry can do. We're not actually building the models. There's a huge onus and responsibility on the model, creators themselves. But I think the things that we can do are, one, that you don't have to use the highest energy model for everything. So just because ChatGPT came out with their O3 model, which I've found to be the best thinking model, but it takes a long time. It takes a lot of energy and it takes a long time for it to think through processes. If you're doing something big like financial modeling, you're going to want to use that model because otherwise you're probably not going to get an accurate enough response. But you don't need to use that model for most things. So switching between the models in ChatGPT, same thing in Claude. You don't need Opus for a lot of things. You could use Sonnet. That's kind of their more just everyday models. So I would say figure out what the everyday models are. Help your employees, help your teams understand the differences between these models so they know which ones to use at different times. And you can even do things like, I've seen some businesses start to equate how much time you're spending, how much energy is involved with every prompt, for example, and how that equates to how much gas you would use in a car, the same amount of energy. So something that you can understand, that your employees can understand. So they're like, oh my gosh, if I use this model for this exercise, it's like driving to New York City, like then that it kind of blows your mind and it puts it into perspective, versus other things would be much smaller. So there's little things you can do like that. But I think prioritizing your model usage is a big one.
Yeah, that's
The
really
other
good.
thing that you could do is we do this at Shimmer. We use AI for like our own marketing, of course. And there are some things that we'll generate that we don't need to do over and over again. So like, with books, like you could save kind of a database of your evergreen content, the things that continuously work so that every time you need it, you're not regenerating it,
Right.
because that takes more model usage every time you do it again and again.
Yeah, that's a great use for a title management system to take all that data, stick it into a location where it's readily available and can be utilized in lots of different ways.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're getting close to the end here, but I have one more question I want to run before we move on to questions from the audience, and that's on copyright. So copyright obviously is front page news. The firing of Shira Perlmutter and the talk of a possible executive order that would declare AI training fair use have a lot of publishers kind of rattled. So how do you think the industry should respond to this issue of copyright?
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like in general, there's this kind of rule that you should follow that's like when the ground shifts, agility is really the only safe footing. You can't
Yeah.
just stay in place. You can't be frozen by it. You have to move along with it. You have to be prepared in advance to move along with it. So this is obviously a very evolving thing. We don't really know where it's going to land, but Mark Williams, who I'm sure a lot of people know on this call as well, wrote an essay right after this situation on May 11th. And he said that there are probably three possible futures. And I tend to believe, I think these seem sensible to me. He said that the courts will either bless fair use for training, they'll reject it, and publishers will have the leverage then, or there will be an executive order which will shortcut everything, and that will obviously end up favoring tech. So some things that I think publishers should do is start thinking about the way that you can get your licensing agreements now. Because I mean, I'm not the expert in this, I'm no lawyer. This is really just my opinion as working in this space, and I care a lot about the way that the copyright has not been taken care of by the AI companies, just because I work in an AI business in this industry. But I'm certainly not like any legal, don't have a legal perspective on it. But what I would say to my friends, who owned a publishing company, is get your licensing deals done now, because we don't know what's going to happen, and who knows what's going to happen with fair use. But make the profit that you can now, and start getting your licensing deals now if that's something that you want to do in your company, and start taking advantage of the AI technology that is being built off your books, because it's kind of been there, done that, so you're either going to not take advantage of it, or you're going to take advantage of the technology that is, using your content. So I think just being as proactive as possible in getting the money that you can, and also using the technology that has been built way better because it's using the great content from books and not just like a bunch of garbage, out there on the internet. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Okay, Brooke Horn, I think we have some questions we can probably go through.
We do have some questions. Let's go ahead and get to those. So first, this applies to both of you, Joshua and Brooke. Can you talk a little bit more about training AI in prompt engineering? We hear a lot about power prompting and smart prompting, garbage in, garbage out. How do you better prompt AI for the outcomes that you want?
Go ahead, Brooke.
Okay. There's a lot of guides out there on like how to do really good prompting. Like, for example, you want to let the prompt know like what profession they are. So if you're having them do a financial analysis, you want to tell them, today I need you to be, a financial controller or a CFO, etc. Set the context of who the audience is if you're creating content. Like, basically, the more granularity that you can give the prompt, the better that is for like Chat GPT. Actually, this is actually the reverse is true. We found for like video and image models. So there's not kind of one blanket way to write prompts that are like the best way to do it. But you also, the thing that I have found too, is that if you try to give it too much at once, it will get confused. So if you try to, we were at Shimmer, we were training a new AI bot, like a new AI analyst within our system to help support our customers for like questions that we don't need to answer as a human, but can be answered by training on all the way that we've answered these questions in the past. And we tried to give it 1,000 emails at once and just say, now write me an FAQ. And it didn't work. It takes too long to process, but it also didn't work. Like it hallucinated like crazy. So what you need to do in that case is break it up in chunks. You can give it all the emails, but then you need to give it task by task by task. Okay, now that you completed this one and you did this one well, first tweak these things, now move on to the next one. So I would say chunk it up, and that will help you get quality results and also allow you to check the results along the way. And you'll just learn how to get better at your prompting then. I mean, all the prompt guides that I've said, I've seen out there, I get them a lot in my newsletters as well. I don't use any of that, and I work with AI really easily. So it just kind of becomes intuitive as you work with it, just like when you learn how to communicate with a teammate, so it will become intuitive as you kind of test and learn and you fail. And then you learn what actually did work.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well that uh, you can use AI to help you generate prompts for AI. So again, this idea of if I'm using an image AI system, I can use a generative text AI system to help me write a good prompt that will give better detail to that image generation tool. The goal is to always give it what's going to be useful for that specific tool. And if you can use AI to help you generate and take, again, words that you wouldn't come up with that will help that generative tool do a better job, take advantage of those kind of interacting capabilities there.
Absolutely.
Also knowing your audience, if you're trying to develop marketing content for your book and your tip sheet, your marketing copy,
Yeah.
have AI be a specific audience member and then play around with that a little bit and see what you can do.
Yeah, and that's a key point too, Brooke. I think we have to give AI enough to work off of, right? If you're putting like again, Shimmer does this a lot because you're giving the whole book, even the entire book content into the AI tool. But the if you're trying to write a better book description, you need to give it more than just the current book description, right? You need to give the tool enough information to be able to make better decisions about how to write, give you back good content. So there is a garbage in, garbage out aspect of this, and some of it's not the prompt you're writing; it's really just the information you're giving it. And is there enough information in its database or in its system that it's working off of?
And I think this skill in prompting, like the question mentioned, like super prompting, or maybe some other words as well. I haven't heard those, but prompting like is now evolving into, you can now specialize your own GPTs, for example. So it's not about like one prompt at a time. It's about teaching an AI how to do a specific task for you. So creating, maybe you're using it to do contracts quite frequently. So then you train specialize your own GPT, which you can do right in ChatGPT, I'm sure, and the other AI models as well. And then you have kind of a system that you have working for you. The next step then is agents. So the difference, in case anyone on the call doesn't really understand the difference between agents and, a specialized GPT, an agent, a specialized GPT will know everything about the task that you are asking it to do, and it will be able to redo something like a contract, but an agent is something that takes action. So that's the difference between an agent. It will then automatically send the contract and ensure that it gets it back, so it's actually taking an action with the thing that it's creating for you. And that will be the next wave. So agents are pretty new, but that will be the next wave. We'll just have to keep learning all of these new skills. Prompting will be probably a thing of the past. It'll be funny that we were all trying to figure out how to do the best prompt, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Very helpful. We also have a question, very akin to this. Can AI help me identify my audience? Who are they? Where are they? How do I reach them? Let's talk a little bit about that.
100% it can. So I can speak specifically as to what we do at Shimmer. We do what we call reverse discoverability, which is only possible because of AI. So what Joshua just mentioned, we basically analyze all of the text in the book. We do it in a safe system. It's not training AI models or anything like that. But the benefit of that is that we can analyze every bit of text in a book and build out what we call our proprietary book DNA, which helps us understand not just the genre category, like the typical things, the interests that you would think, that you typically target, books on, but we also get into the psychological depth of the book. And we are able to do that because you can train AI on various psychology models, human values models, interests, emotions. And then it then knows how to analyze a book and know whether it has the values of faith, hedonism, power, security, etc. And it can then really understand a book's depth to a degree that you have not been able to do. And then you can basically use all of that information to create the correct interest groups in Facebook and Instagram, keywords for targeting in Google and other places. So, and then the beauty of AI is that you can test and learn, like I said earlier. So you can start big, but all within the confines of what the data knows about your book to start. And then you can learn about what really works, home in on from hundreds of interest groups, you can home in on the top 10, 20, 30, and then you can learn on the back end what are the demographics that are actually coming. You can learn, age, gender, location. All of that is captured by most of these, Facebook, Instagram, most of these advertising systems. So then you're learning about your audience rather than having to try to figure out who your audience is before you even know.
Yep.
Can you provide maybe one each, for the sake of time, a specific example of what AI you're currently using and how for marketing? So one tool and one task. Let's start with you, Joshua.
This is interesting actually. So at the Firebrand side, we needed to create a database, a sample database of content that wasn't real books. So we utilized some AI tools, ChatGPT and some other tools to help us develop out fake books. We came up with fake titles and then developed fake book descriptions and fake keywords and all of that, and utilize that as a way of kind of, okay, we have samples of different types of books. So from a Firebrand marketing perspective, we really need that, that type of fake data to help us fill out a demo database. But we also utilize it a little bit in our other marketing. We use Canva and some of the AI tools that are built into Canva for some of our just visual design and things like that. And looking at other types of things as well on the marketing side.
Brooke.
Honestly, it's really hard to pick just one, but I will follow your rules and choose Gamma, which is a presentation creation software. So essentially what you can do is you can take there's many different ways to feed it content, but you can take, for example, like a 20-page document that you've written, maybe it's your marketing plan, and you can give it to Gamma. It will create it into a beautiful PowerPoint presentation. Or you can use it, you can do the same thing and choose to, rather than a PowerPoint presentation, to create like your web pages or a different type of free form type of document. But you can create your own like branding templates and everything. So it is cut down, like for the publishing industry, you're doing things like your sales slip sheets and things like that. All of that could be really beautifully and easily handled by using a presentation software like Gamma. So I absolutely love it. It cuts down days when I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation for any type of thing.
Brooke, this is specifically regarding Shimmer. What platforms do Shimmer work best on?
Platforms I'm guessing that means in terms of like what platforms to advertise on, like Facebook, Instagram, etc. Shimmer works on any platform, but because we only have got started a year and a half ago, we're rolling things out little bit at a time, as we see what really works and whatnot. So we started on Google ads and then Facebook ads and Instagram ads. Hands down, Facebook and Instagram is just better advertising for books than Google ads. Probably there would be a lot of agreement with that on this call. They serve different purposes. Some channels will be more top of funnel advertising, more awareness driving, like Google is, for example, whereas Facebook and Instagram are more middle of funnel. Bottom of funnel would be things like Amazon. We're not on Amazon ads yet, but we're in beta testing for that. And also for Pinterest and LinkedIn. Great early signs on those channels as well. But I would say I wouldn't answer this question like, what does Shimmer work best on? It depends on your book. So what I always suggest to our customers is you want to make sure, whether you're using Shimmer or not for your advertising, you're most likely to actually be able to drive people all the way to buy your book if you're matching the content of the book to the mindset of the people that are on that channel at the time that you're hitting them with your advertising. So for Facebook and Instagram, this is an entertainment channel, right? Like you're scrolling through Instagram at 10 p.m. at night as you're in your bed falling asleep. If you're hit with like a research book or educational book, you might raise your awareness of it, and you might say, like, you might make a note of it, I should look into this tomorrow when I'm at work, but you're not going to go straight off and buy it at that time. That's not the mindset that you're in. Whereas you might buy that next, horror novel that you see coming through. So same thing with LinkedIn and business books. You're not going to buy a fiction title to the extent that you're going to buy a business book on LinkedIn. I'm not saying anything that's groundbreaking here, but it is it's easy to kind of move out of that mindset. And if you get yourself in the mindset of matching content to mindset of the purchaser, it's going to be more successful in driving purchase.
Great, thank you. I think both of you could touch on this one. Can you talk a little bit more about what systems are safe to put copyrighted information to? Let's talk about best practices for sensitive content.
Joshua, do you want to take this, or?
Go ahead.
So my experience, I mean, I don't have experience with all of the tools firsthand, but within like ChatGPT and Claude and all of those kind of models that, that everyone is using, they're in the settings, you are able to say that you don't want it to train on your documents. And so it's really important to click that. Some of the models will allow that only within the Pro, or like one of the upgraded systems, that you're actually paying for and not within the free, but some of them offer within the free. So make sure that you're looking in those settings. They kind of hide it. It's been a while since I turned this on in my own settings, but it's something like in ChatGPT, the setting is help it learn to teach other, help it learn for everyone, something like that. Well, that just means that it's help it train, so you need to click that off, but it doesn't say specifically don't train on my data. So you kind of have to navigate and find it. But that would be my suggestion for best practices for anything that you're using. Also, you got to really read the terms and conditions of every single one of your softwares now. WeTransfer, for example, they have it in their terms and conditions that they're allowed to. I don't know to the extent that they actually do this, because we have done quite a bit of due diligence on it to figure out whether we can use it or not internally. But it does say in its terms and conditions, like many other platforms like that it has the ability to use the data that's transferring through. So just read your terms and conditions for all your softwares, because basically today, everything has AI in it. So there's the risk of that with everything that you use.
Yeah, and I would say as well that as a company, this is where having a company's standards and AI policies in place very, very important. And if your company can come up with AI policies, then obviously, if you have an IT team, they as well can come up with lists of tools that are appropriate for your use, and even some firewalled tools that are specifically for the use of the marketing team. That's what we do at Firebrand on our coding side, and even internally for other things. We are a Google-based, we use a lot of Google stuff. So Gemini is kind of built into a lot of the stuff we're doing. And as a result of that, it is firewalled, right? As a company, it's firewalled, which helps us with the questions of, it's not going and doing stuff outside, training other tools. But you have to have those policies in place, and then also have, what are the approved tools, and make sure that you're using approved tools, and having, like Brooke was saying, having the instructions to every team member. Here's where to go to turn in that tool that's approved to use. Here's where to go to turn off that training capability.
I think you just also need to be more careful with your own documents as well. If you have a very sensitive document that you've created, it's riskier now to share it even internally, because someone could be tempted. Say you wrote a report for something and that's proprietary. Someone could easily say, like, God, I don't want to read this 50-page report. I'm going to just like throw it in my AI and tell it to give me a summary. So you do have to be more careful now, because there is that temptation to give a document to AI to help you get through it quicker. And you need to make sure that you're not allowing people to do that with your own proprietary documents.
Yep.
Well, we are about at time. That went so fast. I just want to thank both of you, Joshua and Brooke, for your expertise. I do want to say, for any folks on the call, if you want to continue the conversation, BISG does run an AI working group where we talk about the AI use throughout the industry, and I'll drop the link to the page for that in the chat. We would welcome your participation there. And just another reminder, this was recorded, and we'll get that recording out to everybody who registered. So thank you both so much for your expertise and your time today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.